Hello again, everyone, and welcome back to Reddit Aliens. I am John, and as always, thank you so much for being here. Good topic? Let's do it. What's the weirdest thing someone just casually told you, as if they thought it was normal? Please remember to like, share, and subscribe. Husband 30 and I were pushing our shopping cart out of the grocery store when a random man who honestly looked like Dumbledore looked at my husband and said, "Take my hat, you're gonna need it, you'll be bald very soon." Obviously, my husband didn't take it. It was super odd of him to say because my husband had a full head of hair. 3 months later, my husband was diagnosed with a condition that made him lose all of his hair. Weird coincidence. A friend of mine was explaining to me why he had to repeat kindergarten. When I was 5, I was at a family barbecue and I couldn't find my dad. I looked all over, and finally I found him in the garage. He was tied to a chair, and 2 of his cousins were beating the shit out of him. A couple of days later, my dad was driving me to school, and he saw one of the cousins walking down the street. He pulled over, jumped out of the car, and shot his cousin in the head. I missed too many days of kindergarten because of the murder trial, so I had to repeat it. I was chatting to a woman in the grocery checkout line, and she commented that she'd lost a lot of weight. It was on topic. Since I need to lose weight, I asked her how she did it. She said her husband, now ex, had poisoned her with antifreeze over a period of time. She barely survived. I wasn't sure what to say, so I said that I didn't think I'd try that method of weight loss. She laughed. A guy once told me how he loved the feeling of wearing casts, so he'd put a cast on himself for days or weeks on end, even if it meant he couldn't drive and would be stuck at home the entire time. He'd used the vacation time just to wear full leg and arm casts. Oh, my parents fight every day, and my father left in a rage this morning, saying he was going to jump in front of a train. I hope he comes back before I get home. He did before. I was at a fancy dinner in a country where meat is a central part of the diet. One man, however, was a vegetarian. As this was uncommon in this area, I asked what got him interested in vegetarianism. He explained that he was once forced to eat other human beings and has not been able to eat meat since. It was an unfortunately true story of how he'd been stopped by terrorists in some African country when he was chaperoning a bus full of children on some trip. Granted, he knew it wasn't normal, but he dropped it so casually, as if it were as banal as any other reason to become vegetarian. I had a college professor on the first day of class say that she's obsessed with Q-tips and clearing her ears and that her family has to limit her to 3 a day. Was like 10 or 11 and riding public transit and had some dude in his 30s sit next to me, putting me up so I was in the window seat and they're in the aisle seat so I'm trapped, and starts talking about how he just got out of prison for R-ing his brother and how you shouldn't do that just because someone makes you angry. Told in a way where they thought they were passing on really helpful advice. It was so surreal I didn't even realize how disturbing it actually was until the first retelling of the story. This girl was oversharing her life with me and told me that her dad abused her when she was younger and now she regularly hooks up with her brother, and she wasn't complaining. She said it as it was the most normal thing. These are many years ago. I was walking on a long, narrow, and mostly empty path on campus. As I crossed paths with this literal stranger, I mumbled a courteous greeting, as we do in the South. "Me, how's it going?" Female student. I just recovered memories of being molested. Not that being molested is normal, and definitely not that recovered memories of a childhood abuse is normal, but the way she told me was so casual it threw me for a loop. Okay, so years ago, I was going through training to work at the State Department. The background checks are pretty thorough. Lying or omitting something will get you into trouble when it comes to a secret clearance. We had some time to kill, so we're sharing with each other, including the instructor about wild stuff they did when they were younger. The worst anyone said was that the paintballed a Home Depot until the dude, as casual and jovial as a person can be, told us this funny, lighthearted story of a time someone owed his friend drug money, and his friend stopped at the house and handed him an AK-47, and they went into the house, and he held the guy's mom at gunpoint while the friend robbed the house of some valuables. Seeing the slow transition from smiling faces to confused faces to dumbfounded faces for everyone in the room is one of the funniest things I've witnessed in person. He was telling it as if it was a story of smashing mailboxes. By the end of it, the instructor, former FBI agent, had his shocked face in his hands like he was watching a horse effing a human. People gave him plenty of outs like, "Yeah, but this is just a joke though, right?" To which he would respond with some variation of, "No bro, it happened exactly like this." The instructor gave him the last out. "That didn't actually happen, right?" And he was like, "Nope, it happened exactly like that." He was escorted out by 2 officers, and it's not hyperbole to say none of us ever heard from him again. He scrubbed his social media and everything. TL, DR. Dude told a story about how he committed felonies and never got caught to an FBI agent. So now the question will always be, I guess, was the person just saying that to get out of it, or did he really happen the way he described it and thought that he could just say it? Either way, oh well, probably works for the CIA now. I've had 12 DUIs, 8 concussions, and have died twice. Can't wait till I can drive again. This time, I'll take life more seriously once I get this ankle bracelet off and my license back. I don't know what was the most alarming part of the sentence. A story from a friend in Colorado. Someone once asked, "Could you watch my wolves? I can pay you in weed." There's a lot to unpack in that question. I was walking to work one day, and a random older lady across the street waved me over. The gamer in me felt a side quest coming, no? She waved me over to tell me that her son had just died, but her words, "He was a shithead, so it's not a total loss." Honestly, it made my day, but I still felt bad. I was leaving the grocery store with one of the employees came up to me and said, "You remind me so much of that guy in Colorado that killed his wife and his kids." Me, well, that's pretty disturbing. Her, "Do you know who I'm talking about?" Me, "Not right offhand." Her, "You should Google it. You look a lot like him. I'm always following true crime shows and I finally got summoned for jury duty. It's very exciting." Me, "Okay, yeah, that's great. Have a nice day." Hasty exit followed. I'm standing on a corner in the middle of the city writing a text message. I hear this woman start ranting and raving. I don't take notice until I hear her say, "You effing boy." I look up and she starts singing, "Boy, boy," and pointing at me like a kindergarten bully. I'm confused for several reasons. Firstly, she's well dressed in a business suit and nice hair and shoes. Secondly, I'm not even Jewish. I worked with someone who had been in the news for driving a car in which 3 passengers died. She casually mentioned that the mother of one of the victims was very, very angry at her, and she said to me, she has other children. I know a guy, we don't talk often, but due to business we cross paths on occasion. More or less every time we talk, he asks if I'm ready for a total societal collapse coming next week, or Tuesday, or the end of the month, and so on. I just tell him that it's not going to happen. He usually then asks about my crystal ball, so I remind him that I've been right every time. When I worked retail, a girl I worked with, maybe early 20s at that point, was telling me about her good friend who had just gotten pregnant because she passed out at a party and woke up with a guy on top of her, just as he was finishing. The girl asked where he came, and he just callously replied that he came inside her. The girl, now faced with dealing with pregnancy, basically completely on her own with no money. My friend or coworker told me this story with the tone of, "Can you believe that asshole?" But in a resigned way, at the level you might tell a story about someone not holding an elevator or not tipping on a large bill. When I asked if the girl had called the police, she looked at me like I had 2 heads. I said, "Because that's R," and she gasped and said, "Oh yeah." It was clearly the first time it had occurred to her that it was an actual crime that could be reported, and not just something assholes do sometimes that you just have to deal with. So I'm guessing her friend didn't think of it either. That was a depressing day. I went into a Sally Beauty Supply a few months ago looking for nail polish. This very normal looking woman, who's looked like she was in the 50s, but actually in her 30s, casually asks how my day is going. I said it's great. Yours? She does the big sigh while blowing raspberry. So my boyfriend and I are fighting. I just had my birthday last week, turned 32, and he was supposed to take me to get sushi, but he had to take his mom to do her laundry. But then after he went to buy drugs, I guess, so he ran from the cops and wrecked my car into a telephone pole. He's paralyzed and in the hospital. They said he won't walk again, and he's been calling and texting, crying, wanting me to take care of him, but I dumped him. I mean, it's over. You're paralyzed and your dick won't work. Plus, you totaled my car, and it was impounded, and I found out my insurance lapsed, and he stole my food stamps. I'm just at a loss. I've got 7 kids with 3 great guys, and I have to raise my kids. I can't raise these kids and a cripple man too. I'm like, look, I'm a young, attractive woman, and I've got a good job at Sally, making almost $10 an hour, and they're saying I could be management by the 4th of July. That's big for someone like me. So anyway, I'm just going through it, and no one understands. You're a really nice person. You're so easy to talk to with such kind eyes. You're probably tired of hearing me talk about this. I just stood there dazed. Do you need help finding something? I grabbed a random bottle of nail polish. I didn't even want it, but I just wanted out of there so bad. I'm only buying nail polish online for a while. My ex-girlfriend, who I genuinely believe is a clinical sociopath, told me once about breaking the nose of a neighborhood girl who was developmentally disabled when she was 10 because she was bored and the girl was annoying her. She told the story like she understood it was wrong, but I got the sense that she knew she was supposed to tell it that way, not that she agreed. As a kid, I used to casually tell people my stepdad liked to go into the garage and film himself getting high and then dressing up in women's clothes and putting makeup on poorly. My mom hated that. When I was in high school, I was sitting next to a friend on the school bus. Mid-conversation, he spits his gum into a wrapper and puts a new piece of gum in his mouth. When I asked him why, he said that his tooth fell out in the gum, but he didn't want to interrupt the conversation, so he just nonchalantly switched out the pieces. My coworker wasn't feeling well and proceeded to tell in detail about her vaginal discharge. She seemed slightly miffed when I politely told her I was sorry she wasn't well, but that level of personal detail was not appropriate. Why would you want your coworker to have these images in their head? What the F? Why? While on a beach trip, I was trying to play with my brother in the waves. He walked up to me and casually told me that he had decided he no longer loved me, and that he wished we weren't related, and that I shouldn't try to be around him or play with him anymore. I was 8 at the time, and that crushed me. Babysitting a 3-year-old during playtime. She quite matter-of-factly tells me that her stuffed dinosaur is very sick and has to live in the hospital because his parents are dead. I was discussing a Jeffrey Dahmer documentary with my brother, and my dad just nonchalantly commented on how he grew up with Dahmer and played with him as a kid. Turns out my dad's cousin was neighbors with Dahmer, and they used to play together when he went and stayed with his cousin. Another one, regarding my dad, was when I was watching some TV mystery show, and they were talking about near-death experiences and the light at the end of the tunnel thing, and my dad just casually butted in that he had one of those. He got a severe fever as a kid, and almost died, and seen the light and everything. My grandmother told me that one of my uncles should have been a blowjob. She also said that if birth control pills existed during the years that she was having babies, she would have taken them by the handfuls, because every time she walked past the bedroom door, she ended up pregnant. She told me this after I got married. Many years ago, I was a college student taking psychology classes. I participated in a group discussion thing at a mental hospital where they were attempting to prepare patients for interacting with the world when they got out. I was kind of unsettling because everyone wore normal clothes and you couldn't tell who were the patients and who were the counselors or visitors. One guy was very pleasant and authoritative, and I assumed he was one of the staff. He was sitting right next to me, and the day we were discussing dealing with our parents, and he said very calmly, "It was far more upsetting for me when I killed my mother than when I killed my father." I was so stunned, I just froze.